the UK. God bless you.
Well, what a special morning to be here. That cake looks incredible. To be honest, Shirley has been a wonderful supporter of DFN since pretty much we started, and she and her family have tracked with us, so it is really super special to be here for Shirley's special celebration day as well. I hardly feel like there's much left to say after Harry's prayer. I think he kind of nailed everything about us and about what we do. So we just want to say a huge thank you to Waverley Baptist Church and for David and Heather and the Board of Elders and the Missions Committee and just all of you for the incredible support, not just for DFN, but of course for Alison, who's absolutely integral to all that we do. Well, God is integral to all that we do, but he uses Alison as well. And that's just such a blessing to us. Can I ask how many people here came to our dinner last night? Great, okay. Well, for some of you, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your generosity and partnership. We will have a little bit of an overlap with some of it, just for those. Hands up who's never really heard about DFN or what we do, and you're sort of hearing things and you don't know much about us at all. Just a couple, okay. So then I thought this morning I'd start by reading from Luke 15, if that can come up, Luke 15. Is that on the slide? Sorry. That's all right. Okay. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbours together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbours together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin.' In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels over one sinner who repents." So this particular passage, well, the whole of Luke 15, touches on three particular parables that show God's longing and his desire to rescue and for restoration. The lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son. But this morning I'll just touch on these two that I've read this morning. So just pray. Father, thank you for this time together. Thank you that we can open up your word. Thank you that we can learn from it. And I just pray that your Holy Spirit will take the words that I speak today and make them relevant to each person here. In Jesus' name, amen. So all three of these parables, although just the two that we touched on, they show very much that God sees the one. They show that he searches for the one. And they show that he rejoices when what is lost is found. And in our work in India, we also focus on the big picture, but we also focus on the one. And so we wanted to join with you today and share about what you're sowing into and tell various stories about the one here and the one there and the one there so that you can see some of the impact of what you're sowing into. So if there's such rejoicing over finding a lost sheep or finding a lost coin, can you imagine how much joy there is in heaven over a life that has been restored? When hope is found and someone finds purpose and relationship with God, there's just such rejoicing. And God calls us to be a part of that, to be his hands and his feet to those around us. So missions, which is what I'm speaking about this morning, it talks about the big picture, it talks about the big numbers, it talks about the statistics and so on. But it also touches on the one person, the one family, and the one community that is impacted through ordinary people. So Shirley, you might say things like feeling weak or feeling tired and so on, and I guess that's very much how I often feel too. And Paul obviously felt it too, because he said, "When I am weak, then I am strong." And so even if you think maybe I'm disqualified because I feel tired or old or whatever it is that you find yourself in, it doesn't mean that God can't use you, because all it means is we need to make ourselves available. We're just his channel for him to work through, to draw others to himself. And just to be faithfully looking around for who is the one that's in our life. So for us, for those of you who don't know, we work in India. So why India? So when I was very young, just the previous slide. The one before that? Yeah. When I was very young, I remember being in a room and my dad was watching the television, and I don't really remember what the story was about, but it was an article about untouchability in India. And I just remember as I could have been 6 or 7, really young, and I just remember thinking, how can somebody be untouchable? It just really went against the grain for me. And here in Australia, we have a Judeo-Christian worldview, which is predicated from Genesis chapter 1, that everybody is created with value. Everybody is created in God's image. So everyone has intrinsic worth. And so to hear this word untouchable, it just really, I felt really violated, and something stirred up inside me about that injustice. And, all through the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation, you can read about God's heart for justice, for those on the margins, for those who are the invisible, for those who have been left behind, for those who have been ignored. Even when the laws were framed and it was an agricultural society and they were told, only harvest, to leave that edge of the ground for those who are in need to come and harvest themselves, and that they can glean themselves. And so even in the provision of the laws, it was all the way through God's provision for and care for and heart for those on the margins. And so there's so many verses I could pick out, but I've just popped 2 up there. But the need also in India is immense. So if we go to the next one, this one is I'll just show it to you. Those dots are not people, those dots are people groups that are yet to hear that there is a God who loves them, yet to hear that there is, a God who sent his son to die for them, to restore relationship, to be the lost that are found again. So, Jonathan and I, we love India. We don't speak badly about India. We love the people, we love the culture, and I think one of our favourite things is the food. But it is a country of immense need, and so we feel really called and challenged to be a part of what God is doing there. So I realise that, as I said before, most of you will know about our work through Alison and through Jonathan sharing here before, but just for those who don't, I just touch on a few things. So who are the Dalit people? Who do we work with? So we work with the Dalit people, and as I mentioned last night, we had a census here in Australia recently where everybody was counted, and if you weren't, then you'll be in trouble and know about it before long. But in India, the Dalit people are those known as the untouchables, so they fall outside the caste system. So in India, you're born in your caste, you live in your caste, you marry in your caste, you die in your caste, and you can't move from one caste to the other. So in Australia, you can talk to the children who have just left, and they will have aspirations of all sorts of incredible things, some of them realistic, some of them not. But they do have that opportunity to dream. And I think one of Beryl's really impacting stories that she told me one time was she was with a Dalit child who had just started at our school, and they were in a city and they saw this great big beautiful hotel that had just been built, and it was all shiny and new. And she said to this child, just imagine what being in that hotel could be like for you one day. And the child looked at her and said, oh yes, I could be a cleaner there, and I could scrub those floors until they are so clean and shiny. And, this is what we want to break off these people, not the idea that they're going to be servants or slaves for the rest of their lives, but that there is actually a purpose and a plan for their lives, and it's so much more than being told that you're created unequal. People often ask where we work, so I show them the next slide, which is pretty much all over India, and that's all we need to see of that slide. We can explain more later if you want to ask us about specific parts. And what do we do? So we have 4 key pillars: education, healthcare, economic empowerment, and advocacy or anti-human trafficking. And the gospel infuses all of these aspects of what we do. And so we have over 90 schools. Alison is our child sponsorship director, and she oversees all that we do pertaining to the schools. She does it amazingly. Anyone who knows Alison knows she is efficient, and she just excels, and she's so faithful in all that she does. Healthcare, we have about 7 clinics around the country providing non-exploitative healthcare for these people. And skills training, again, coming back to what I talked about before about gleaning the edges of the field. The Bible doesn't necessarily say always to give handouts to the poor, but it's also providing a space where they can get up and go to work each day and have that dignity of earned success for themselves. And so that's what we provide with skills training. And then our advocacy and work with the anti-human trafficking work, which is basically, rescuing the Jogani women and girls that Harry prayed so beautifully for. So just a quick overview of the schools. As I mentioned, 90 schools. So many of these kids, one thing that people don't understand about our schools is here children have that understanding and joy of play. And in these children in India, many of them don't even have that because they're living in such impoverished circumstances that from the very get-go, they're involved in the family business, whether it's rock collecting, like in the movie Lion, where Saru was being taught as a really young boy, go and get the rocks and gather the rocks, and they're using them for road fill. They don't understand about playing sports or just even climbing on play equipment. But we also provide in our schools healthcare. And so one story we had recently was about a young girl called Hema. And Hema it goes to one of our slum schools, and her dream is to be a police officer. Her parents are daily wage earners, but her father is an alcoholic, and so the family lives, every time there is a little bit of money that comes in, he basically uses it for alcohol. But earlier this year, Hema was coming to school, and she was just getting very unsteady on her feet, and she began losing the ability to speak. And the health worker at the school identified and was very worried about her, and so she alerted the principal, Jyoti, and then they got involved with one of our clinics, and Beryl looked at her and did a whole lot of testing and found out that she was very deficient in a lot of essential vitamins, and so they put her on a regime of medicines and so on. And I got to see this little girl earlier this year, and there she was, that's her in that picture, in the front singing and worshipping God. And she was walking, and the teachers were saying, look, this little girl's walking, and I hadn't seen her at her worst. So they were so thrilled to see this incredible change in her. And so now she's able to participate again, and this little girl has had her life restored to her, which is just incredible. And so the school's become a real hub in the community. This particular slum school, it also has a church that meets every Sunday, so it's impacting not just the children, not just their families, but the greater community as well. And I'm sure Alison's already mentioned that our main focus is rescuing these women who are dedicated into this horrendous practice of temple prostitution. So at a very young age, they get identified, there's a marriage ceremony, and once they hit puberty, they become the property of the village to be used and abused, if we can go on to the next slide. And so these women become alcoholics at a young age, or these girls become alcoholics at a young age, and we were sharing about the hope that's actually coming to these girls through the work that we're doing. And one of the, if we go to the next slide now, because that's the bad news and this is the good news, we're seeing them coming out of the practice and empowered and having all of that dignity restored. And one of the reasons why I chose those 2 Bible passages, or the one Bible passage, but with the 2 parables this morning, is that it reveals something really profound about God's heart for women. So in Jesus' day, women were often overlooked, they were rarely educated, and certainly rabbis didn't teach them. They were confined to very much the domestic sphere, and they were very much second-class citizens. And yet one of the things that we often miss, because we live in an egalitarian society, and we see 2 parables like that, that was so absolutely countercultural in that time, that there would be a message for the men about the lost sheep, and there would be a completely separate message for the women that they could relate to as well. And so Jesus is embracing and teaching all of the people in a way that was just so countercultural. Spiritual truths being taught to women was just unheard of at that time. And, by drawing on these lessons from everyday lives, Jesus is bringing the women on the journey as alongside the men at the same time. It was the same group of people that were hearing both of these. And, Jesus is just restoring dignity to those women by doing that in a way that we miss when we read these scriptures. We don't appreciate the significance of how Jesus did that. And it happened many times through the Gospels. You can see these sort of paired parables, one for the men, one for the women, all the way through. You know, there's the one where the man is knocking on the door, and then there's another one when the woman is. And so, many of the women that we serve have been so exploited, so downtrodden, and so ignored, the invisible ones. And so when they get introduced to Jesus, when they get introduced to a God who sees them, a God who also wants to restore their dignity, they are just like sponges, and they just want to know about this God that wants to have a relationship with them, and see how through the care of our team that there is a God in heaven that loves them. And so these women just respond. They've been feeling so worthless, and now they're being told that they have value and dignity. So far this year, we've seen 576 women and girls rescued from exploitation, 98 girls removed from violent situations, 125 child marriages prevented or stopped, 300 girls in safe shelters, 100 in the one that those who came last night saw, and some in shelters in other states. 775 children or grandchildren of Joginis are enrolled in our schools, and Alison's a big part of that. But 800 of our former Jogini women have been linked to livelihood programs as well. And so we're just seeing this incredible change as these women are flourishing and coming out of this horrendous practice. But we provide them with a whole mix of things. So the healthcare is central. That's on the next slide. And I've already touched on how that impacted this little girl, Hema. And then on the next slide, economic empowerment, as I mentioned. So we have a whole variety of ways that we provide economic empowerment or skills training for these women, from, again, for those who saw last night, the woman who used to sell little vegetables on a mat outside her house and earn just a very pittance to survive, and now she's got this food cart with, you know, a freezer full of drinks and eatables is what Beryl used, not really a word that we use, right through to sewing programs and paramedical courses that are accredited by the government, which equips these women to earn skills like dental hygienists and other paramedical courses, where they go back into the very villages where they were exploited, where they were abused, where they were oppressed, and now they actually have services that people come to them for help. We had one lovely young fellow in Sydney last year, so here's a challenge for you. He heard about our paramedical courses. He wanted to know how much they cost to run, and he ran 7 marathons in 7 days and raised the funds for all of our paramedical courses for a whole year. So he did the Sydney Marathon, and everybody at the end of that would have gone, whew, that's done, great. He got up the next day and did another marathon, and then another marathon, and so on. So it's just so encouraging for us to see how people, ordinary people, can come up with an idea that can help. So in the next slide, I've talked about sort of the big picture, but I wanted to tell you about Vasti. So Vasti is one of the ones, one of those lost ones. So Vasti was orphaned when she was young and sent to live with her uncle and aunt. Now, in our situation, we might be thinking, oh, the poor little mite, I'm going to take her in and love her, and she's lost her parents. But for this family, completely impoverished, it's just another mouth to feed. So they decided to dedicate her to the temple prostitution practice. And so Vasti was dedicated. She suffered extreme abuse, verbal, sexual. She was ostracised in her village. And she decided it was all too much. So she decided to go and find railway tracks, lie on them, and just wait for a train to come. One of our pastors came past, found her, took her home, knew that men had violated her, so passed her to his wife, and then she looked after her and cared for her, and it was God's hands and feet in her life to restore her. So here's Vasti taking baptism, and for many Indians, it's quite easy to accept Jesus in terms of they already worship a million gods, why not one more? But when they take baptism, it's a real renouncing of all the other gods. And so I had the privilege of praying with Vasti soon after this, and now her little girl is one of the girls in our shelter home. Next slide. So our advocacy work is in 350 villages where this horrendous practice happens, and as we said last night, one of our really exciting stories that for the past 3.5 years now, we've not seen one dedication in any of the villages where we work. So we feel like this is a form of human trafficking and ritualised abuse that can actually come to a complete end. So this is what Waverley Baptist is sowing into. It's these numbers, these stats, these figures, these faces, these names. But again, I love that Harry was praying for the persecuted church this morning, because again, we come here, it's sunny, which is great, and we get together and have this lovely celebration and beautiful worship and everything. But it's just not like that in many parts of the world, and India is becoming more and more increasingly in that group of persecuted church. So with the next slide, I'll just read. This is a letter that, or an email that we received not that long ago from one of our pastors to one of our bishops. We're Anglican in India, the work is. At 11 a.m. after our Sunday worship service had concluded, a group of 10 to 12 people attempted to forcibly enter our community hall. Can you imagine? Now we're sitting here and in they come. Abusive and threatening language was used. Women were publicly insulted and harassed. Again, as Jonathan said last night, harassed is often a euphemism for so much worse. Believers were warned not to gather again. Attempts were made to damage the church property. By God's grace, no one was physically harmed. This evening, around 5 p.m, while we were conducting the evening church service and sharing from Acts chapter 9, a group of nearly 35 people entered and disrupted the service. They threatened to attack and tried to beat us, used abusive language against both men and women, and attempted to create fear amongst our community members. Police intervened and helped calm. Before leaving, the group threatened me, the pastor, warning that if I return, they will break my hands and legs. Throughout these incidents, although we were fearful, we stood firm in our faith and continued to pray to the Lord. We humbly request your prayers for protection for our community members and our fellowship groups, wisdom and courage and guidance to continue sharing the good news of Jesus Christ faithfully, that God may soften and change the hearts of those who oppose and persecute us. Thank you for remembering us in our prayers. And so this is real. We have pastors in jail. We have our brothers and sisters experiencing this kind of attack, and we want to stand with them the way that the prayer was this morning. And then the next slide, as has been mentioned again this morning in the prayer, the FCRA Amendment Bill. So this is a bill that was tabled in March before the Indian Parliament to forcibly seize and acquire all assets and lands that have been paid for by foreign funds historically. So think Catholic Church, Mother Teresa, Anglican Church, the Good Shepherd, schools that we have over 90 schools, but it's not just us, it's absolutely immense. And so we had a big call to prayer go out for this as well. And the recent parliamentary sitting has just taken place, and the Indian government wanted to sweep this in so that this would actually be enacted. It was debated and Parliament has just closed, and it didn't get passed, but they have created a small group, a committee that is going to look into this to present it to the next parliamentary sitting. So as always, when things like this get passed, it impacts mostly those who are the poorest, the least of these, the ones that, God has such a heart for. And so, we really would love to call on prayer for that as well. And so if we move to the next slide in response, what can you do? Well, you already partner with us in so many ways. For those of you who don't get our prayer update, we'd love you to sign up for it so you can be praying specifically for little girls like Hema, praying specifically for pastors who are in jail, and upholding our brothers and sisters. We have a monthly Zoom meeting. You can join from the comfort of your own home. You get to see Alison an extra hour a month, and pray specifically with us. So it's 1 hour a month for the comfort of your own home. So our prayer initiative is absolutely critical. We don't believe we're just providing education or even rescuing women. We articulate that little girls have been dedicated to a temple goddess for 2,000 years, and we are going to bring this to an end. It's a really, really significant spiritual warfare that we're involved in, and we would just love you to stand with us in prayer about that. Come to India with us. Alison's been. For those of you who know Simon and Lynn Jones, they've been with us. But I'd love to see others from this church family come with us. So we have a vision trip coming up later this year. I'm taking a group of girls. Jonathan's looking to take a group of guys. One little story from a trip, we took a team from City Life a couple of years ago, and one of the members was a dentist, and we went out to one of our rural clinics, and a lady came that day and she was in excruciating pain with her jaw, and she'd gone to the local hospitals and been turned away because she's HIV positive, not through her own fault, but just through systemic abuse. And so they didn't want to treat her. They looked in her mouth, they saw it was a mess, and they just snapped the damaged teeth off in her jaw and sent her away. So she turned up at our clinic in absolute pain. Brian looked in her mouth. He's a dentist here in Melbourne, and he just identified, she's got 4 abscesses. This is going to go septic. This lady will die if she's not treated quickly. So he talked to the community health worker, who's not a trained dentist and doesn't know all of this, and he sat with her and explained everything. This is what she needs, this is how to do it, etc., etc. And then we raised the funds from that particular group to pay for all of her care. And so when I went back the following November, I was amazed to see this woman standing tall, about this high because of malnutrition, and she just grabbed me and her face was shining, and she actually fell to the ground, and I dragged her up and I go, no, it wasn't me, it was God, it's God, he loves you. So there's a church at that particular clinic, and that lady is now attending church along with her daughter and her grandchildren as well. So it's not just about providing the healthcare, it's about what that means to these women, that somebody actually cared enough to look beyond her HIV positive status and ensure that she got the treatment that she needs. So we'd love you to come on one of our trips. They're really an adventure. If you didn't come to the dinner last night, we've got some of the booklets. We'd love you to take one. And we did have last night live streamed, and we are going to get the recording of it. So if that's something you'd like, to have a chat with Alison, and she'll get you that recording so you don't have to miss out on the fun. There's just so many ways people can be involved. I spoke at a church in Sydney one time, and at the end a man came up to me and he said, oh, I wish I could do more. All I do is fix sewing machines. Aha, I said. Yes, good. So he and his wife ended up on a plane to India, where they not only fixed all the sewing machines from our sewing projects, but he taught the women how to fix their own sewing machines. And then some of them decided they didn't like sewing so much, and they actually liked fixing sewing machines, and started little sewing machine mending businesses which are thriving in the villages. So you might think, my skill is not useful, my skill doesn't resonate. If you want to know more about how you can engage with us in any way, we'd love to have a chat about anything. And of course, finances. None of this runs by itself, and finances are absolutely integral. We want to raise more funds for a very specific school that Alison's heavily invested in the Jogani area, where the children and grandchildren of these women that we've rescued attend, many of them go to. And there's so many other ways. You can support a child at that school for only $480 a year, so $40 a month will support a child there. So if you are wanting to engage in any other way, we'd love you to come and have a chat with us at the table after you've helped yourself to a piece of Shirley's very special birthday cake. But thank you. We want to esteem Alison this morning, and she's just such a fabulous, efficient, faithful, committed member of our team, and she's there because of you guys praying for her, supporting her, encouraging her. So a huge thank you to you for standing with our Alison, and thank you for all your support. 4 tables at the dinner last night, amazing. So thank you, David and Heather, and thank you to all of you for being a part of what God is doing in India.